Hello everyone, this is Alan G., your host of True Crime Man's Dark Imagination. If you like what you see, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll be notified of any future episodes. The most difficult part of producing episodes for this channel comes from those stories that involve children. Throughout history, there have been documented stories of those who possess no moral compass and use the little ones to their advantage, no matter what the cost. What if someone used wives' tales and superstitions to make sure that those youth caught within her immoral web never experienced as much as their own childhood, dashing any hope of a better life? There is a metropolitan area in Barcelona, Spain called El Raval, which even today has an enchanting yet eerie quality about its narrow, odorful streets. Raval is famous for its never-ending nightlife, which unfortunately brings about illegal prostitution as well as other crimes. It now houses around 50,000 people and retains a bohemian yet illicit reputation. By the early 1900s, the population of Barcelona was skyrocketing. There was a week of protests in 1909 known as the Tragic Week, in which there were strikes leading to riots, then eventual occupation by the National Army. Barcelona was becoming a famous port town known to many as the Pearl of the Mediterranean, meaning hotels and brothels were flourishing. El Raval became the red light district where prostitution was rife. Often, prostitutes were transported and sold in other developing cities such as New York and Rio de Janeiro. The streets were full of orphans and thieves. Many children were sold by their parents due to economic struggles, ending up in sweatshops. This way of life created a desperate situation in Ravalito. People would have been terrified for themselves and for their families. Fresh on the minds of the populace was Spain's first documented serial killer, Manuel Blanco Romasanta, who killed 12 people north of the Portuguese border. He claimed to be a werewolf, to which Queen Isabella II allowed him to be examined. Soon after was Juan Diaz de Garagallo. He strangled 5 women and 1 girl in the northern Basque region of Spain. His nickname was Sacamantecas, and he became a boogeyman figure along with Hombre del Saco, who had the myth of eating children. Needless to say, the mindset was different back then in terms of belief of the supernatural. Other stories, such as Jack the Ripper from across the sea in England, would also be widely publicized. From 1912 onwards, a larger number of children went missing in Barcelona, many of which wound up in the aforementioned brothels. The police raided one in Carrer Minerva in 1909, and this is where Enriqueta Martí Ripollès would first become known to the authorities of Barcelona. She got arrested, but was released with lack of evidence. Some said her connections with the elite Barcelona crowd got her off the hook, but children continued to go missing. Hidden behind the insipid name of Enriqueta Martí Ripollès, there is the lady who in 1912 was sadly and famous better known with the truculent nickname of the Vampire of Barcelona. She starred in one of the most atrocious stories of terror and social hypocrisy for those who lived in Barcelona and maybe in all of Europe in the early 20th century. This woman was a terrible serial killer of children. The main difference with the other ones is that she never did it because of any kind of mental illness, but because it was her business, providing with it some of the most disgusting and perverted inner needs of the high society ladies and gentlemen of Barcelona of that era. But who was Enriqueta Martí Ripollès, really? She was a good-looking young girl when she came to Barcelona in the late 19th century. She started working as a servant in several bourgeoisie houses. Since she realized she would earn a lot more money taking profit at her beauty and sweetness, she started working as a prostitute. After a time doing this job, she learned a lot about some of the darker and rotten wishes some humans have, and after saving enough money to rent a nice apartment, she decided to open her own brothel in 1909. But not a normal one. Enriqueta Martí used her sweetness and sneaky abilities to kidnap kids from 5 to 15 years old and use them as prostitutes for some of the richest and fully depraved men of Barcelona. 1909 was a shocking year for Barcelona. The city suffered the social rebellion called La Setmana Trágica, the Tragic Week, along which about 40 churches were burned. Enriqueta Martí's brothel was discovered by the police as well, but by some hidden hand from a mysterious one who had a high influence helped her to get out of jail. Since then, she started an even more terrible business in a new place in the middle of the Raval Quarter, a very poor zone of the city. The new business consisted of kidnapping children from 3 to 12 years old. Once she got them, she used some for deprivation as she did before the arrest. But now, she decided to select some of them for being killed for taking out their fat, blood, and bones to create her own elixirs and facial creams. With that final product, she provided a selected group of distinguished ladies from the high society of Barcelona. Those ladies knew very well from where those products came. But they considered poor children nothing more than a piece of rubbish. The superstition that the blood of young children was good for a long life and their fat great for conserving young skin became even more profitable for Enriqueta. During the day, Enriqueta dressed in a very poor style. It was the best way to avoid being suspicious when she was looking for children to kidnap. She went where kids looked more abandoned, waiting for the bread queue in front of the nuns' monasteries and other places like that. At the fall of night, she usually went home dressed as she was a marquise, wearing the most expensive jewelry. Then she went to El Liceu, the glamorous opera house in Barcelona, where she enjoyed the plays and attended the call of some well-connected new owner. In fact, it seems El Liceu was her main field of operations. Some people from high society were her best clients there, the gentlemen for the children prostitution and the women for the cosmetic products. The disappearing children were always children from the most miserable families. The fact that somebody was kidnapping them for some mysterious reason started to be obvious. Even without having the mass media of nowadays, rumors spread rapidly between the population. Although the Barcelona mayor did not take the rumors about kidnapped children seriously at all. In fact, late in 1911, the mayor of Barcelona issued a statement saying that there was no basis to the rumors which had been circulating in the city. He officially stated that children were not being kidnapped and murdered. Unfortunately for everybody, at that time, the rumors were painfully true. Thanks to a nosy neighbor, the truth was discovered and it went further than anybody ever could imagine. The police still rescued a poor 7-year-old girl still alive who lived in a true regime of slavery. Sadly, they weren't in time to save the last dead victim of the woman, Pepitito, a boy of 7, killed just some few days before. Enriqueta had several apartments throughout the city. In one of them, she killed and made her horrible works with their bodies. In another one, she lived with the children. In the last one, a very luxurious place indeed, she had the brothel, where rich important people of the politic, business, and even the art world enjoyed degenerated, orgasmic ceremonies of blood and sex. The police, poor guys imagine their nausea, found pieces of at least 10 bodies perfectly prepared in this demonic cosmetic factory. In 1912, Enriqueta Martí, at the age of 43 years old and still being a nice-looking woman, was arrested on suspicion of murder and illegal prostitution. At that time, the death penalty still existed in that country, but the inspector of police took the case as something personal. He wanted to pull out the yarn until knowing all the truth about the list of rich clients of Enriqueta. The newspapers of the time started a series of chronicles about the case that were front page not only in Catalonia, but in all Spain for weeks. But the judgments seemed never to arrive. In fact, it seems that Enriqueta said, "My clients maybe were monsters, but not me." She was not a psychotic killer as El Sacramentecas, Jack the Ripper, or even fictional ones as Hannibal Lecter or Norman Bates. but a normal woman, a very intelligent one, who had just no moral prejudice, and in the coldest way you can imagine, she worked straight, thinking only in her own benefits. For her, all she made was just her business and nothing else more. But once again, the clients had to be a lot more powerful than the police, and the journalists imagined that. No one could discover who was on that mysterious list. Sound familiar? Enriqueta tried to kill herself 2 times. The inmates in the prison finally took justice into their own hands and lynched her. The history of humanity is full of things that will remain lost forever. And all those things were the most important ones for a lot of generations. The passage of time made all those things useless and even forgotten. To kill poor kids and use their fat for facial cream is horrible to our eyes. In fact, thousands of kids are dying of misery, working even 18 hours per day to make the cheapest products we buy. We, the poor people, buy them the most even. It's easy to point our finger to that Barcelona high society, but we do something which isn't so much better. Just because it is not so obvious, we don't go to LCU's best seats, we don't have a Rolls Royce, etc. But we survive thanks to the injustice that exists in our world. We buy a toy for our kids by Christmas, and that can be a great illusion for all the family. How nice Christmas is for all of us, and how nice are our traditions. But behind each toy, behind even a cheap 50-leaf notebook, there exists the horror, the exploitation, the human pain, and the blood. It is undeniably horrific. This story draws parallels to the news stories we see every day. Children rescued from an uncertain fate, the use of little ones for immoral purposes, and the normalization of that behavior against the future of our society speaks volumes of the enabling of these monsters to exist. Unfortunately, most of us cannot wait for God's judgment against such fiends. But one day we will discover that even the most revered of our society delve into this godless comportment. Harming children is unforgivable, and as we saw, Enriqueta Martí de los Polas paid the price for her quest for wealth, considering poor children to be disposable. There have been only estimates as to the amount of victims who died at the hands of the Vampire of Barcelona. Some put the total at over 200, some 1,000. One thing is for certain, she received citizens' justice. Now, if you'd like to support the channel, we're on Rumble, PayPal, GoFundMe, and Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. We also have a presence on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Come visit us there. I look forward to seeing you. Until next time.